Hello and welcome to ChinnyVision. This time it's an update on Pac-Man. Pacmania was an arcade game by Namco released in 1987 and probably hitting the West in 1988. It's essentially a 3D isometric version of Pac-Man with some new ghosts. You've got the original Blinky, Pinky, Inky and Clyde, but you've also got two new ghosts called Funky and Spunky. And yes, and some of these ghosts can jump as well, and also you can jump. There's 4 worlds in this game, which are Blocktown, Pac-Man's Park, Sandbox Land and Jungly Steps. The game was ported to many systems, and we're going to look at 8 of them, which I think is an all-time record for how many games we've run using the original hardware and reviewed here on ChinnyVision. At least so far, perhaps we'll do more in the future. Starting off on the Sega Megadrive. A few different options are normal on the menu screen there, but we're just going to play the game in the standard mode. There's the 4 levels: Blocktown, Pac-Man's Park, Sandbox Land and Jungly Steps. And the animations you get from the arcade at the start of each level, just like the original Pac-Man had the animations, except these are slightly more elaborate. And off we go. And the big difference from the arcade version is, well, obviously, instead of having a narrow screen, you've got a wide screen with far more on the screen. Graphically, aside from the larger screen, it plays pretty much identically to the arcade version. Perhaps not quite as lush in the visuals. Don't know why, because the Mega Drive is perfectly capable of replicating the arcade, but it's a pretty good go, certainly, and very authentic. That's level 1 completed. On to level 2. Another animation there. The Mega Drive and the Amiga version we're going to look at seem to have bigger levels. And with levels 2, area 2, you have to complete it twice. There's 2 separate levels to the second location that we're in, so we're on to the second level here now. And there's these little areas that you can go around that means the maps loop around, just like the original Pac-Man did. And when you get to Sandbox Land, you first encounter jumping ghosts as well. So this is level 4 in terms of the game, because level 1 or area 1 only has 1 level to it. Level 2 or area 2 you play it twice, and you play this level twice again. Presumably this is to save memory, to save having lots and lots of different maps, that you're reusing maps. It feels very familiar to normal Pac-Man, and except it is isometric 3D. I think it's a little bit more fun than the original because you've got the variation of the maps. Moving across the Amiga here, and lovely pixel perfect scrolling here on the Amiga. Looks slightly nicer visual look than the Mega Drive version. Just a little bit smoother and slightly more high res. The movement's also perhaps slightly better. I don't know. It just feels a little bit nicer. But again, they've got the full screen here as opposed to the narrow screen of the arcade version. I don't think it changes the dynamic too much, but that said, you get a bit more warning of the ghosts approaching you from the left and right. Of course, it makes no difference up and down. This first map, of course, is a copy of the original Pac-Man map, if you hadn't already spotted that. The layout is exactly the same as Pac-Man would be in 2D. Music on the Amiga version is very nice. All the arcade tunes are here. And we go on to this level, we go on to the second area now. And this is where I think the Amiga version is larger than some of the 8-bit versions. Just keep in mind how big the screen here is, or the area is. Moving on to the Atari ST, and it's a bit of a shock coming across the Amiga, because suddenly you're in this split screen environment with a large high score table on the right and your play area on the left. You're seeing a fraction of what you can see on the Mega Drive and Amiga versions. It doesn't affect the gameplay too much. It's just visually, this looks much more like an 8-bit game than a 16-bit game. I know the original arcade version has a narrow screen, but you're not even seeing as far up or down as you can on the arcade version. I guess it's because the ST doesn't have hardware scrolling. But even so, this does feel slightly lazy. I'm sure a 16-bit computer could do slightly better than this. This tune, by the way, you're going to hear on all the other AY systems, so just keep that in mind as well. Over the Sega Master System, interesting to see what they do here. I love this little animation at the beginning with Pac-Man chasing away the Sega logo. Tech Magic, the same people who brought us New Zealand stories, so do have high expectations of this. There we go, and we can select the levels. Start off from round 1 again, Lockdown, which is easy. Nice animation there, again, as we've seen on all the other systems. And off we go. Looks like the Mega Drive version, but with slightly more, or slightly less defined graphics, shall we say. The tune, again, it suffers from that slight Master System thing where I don't know if it's the Master System sound chip or just the sound design is on the Master System. Everything always sounds slightly beepy and tuneless, and I'm sure the system can be capable of better than this. But it plays really well here on the Master System. Again, it's a larger playing area. You've got the full screen, which I quite like, actually. I don't really see the advantage of having that narrow screen that the arcade version has. And some lovely animations here between the levels. Look at all those sprites going across there. Or perhaps that's one big... No, that's one big graphic, isn't it? The ghosts on the Master System version look a little bit odd, especially when they're travelling up the screen because their eyes are still slightly visible on the right-hand side. They're just a little bit small. And all the ghosts have different behaviours, just like they did in the original Pac-Man. There's certain ghosts, and if you look out for the eye, there's one with funny eyes. He's the most intelligent ghost. And other ghosts behave differently as well, so you've just got to keep an eye out for that. On some of the 8-bit versions where it's all the same colour, we'll see the problems you can see there. Over to the C64, quite fast animation here on the intro screen. Oh, this is fast. Slightly zoomed out view. Now, I don't think... The level feels much smaller on first impressions. But I think this is the same size as all the 8-bit versions and the ST version as well. So keep an eye out for that. I think on level 1 here there's 11, I've counted 11 pills going from left to right, I think. So we'll keep an eye out for that. I think the problem here on the C64 is that it feels slightly zoomed out. And the thing really does throw itself around at a fair old whack, which on the one hand is quite nice, but it also speeds up the gameplay a little bit and you get through these levels. I don't know. We look at some of these other 8-bit versions. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't quite feel that full-on 3D isometric thing. I know it's isometric, but I think it's just the levels are feeling a little bit too small. You're seeing a little bit too much of the level. If you look in the middle there, you've got the entire map left to right, not up and down, on the screen. They've got the status bar on the bottom there, which is quite nice and is in a higher res. I don't know. It's something not quite right, put it that way, about the C64 version here. And that may be me being just a little bit picky. I think it's just a little speed, just a little bit too fast. And the ghost certainly, it feels more confined. I mean, is that one way to put it? That in Pacmania you can usually be a little bit further away from the ghosts, but with the increased speed, it always feels like they're on a little bit more upon you on the C64, certainly in level 1. And there you go, look how quickly I'm surrounded by fast-moving ghosts there. I tried to jump to get away from that one. One thing to mention when you jump, by the way, is one way to get away from some of the ghosts is you jump and then change direction when you're halfway over them. Their eyes will change and they look above, but they'll continue going in the same direction they were going. That's one way to get away from them. But you can never fool the ghost with funny eyes. It's just a little bit too fast here on the C64. Just a little bit too fast and compact. I just don't know. It's weird. I sort of point at one of these ghosts with the funny eyes if I can find one. Power Pills work exactly the same way as Pac-Man does. You've got the same fruit bonuses in the middle of the screen. I think it's Clyde. Is it Clyde that's the most clever ghost? And he's the one who chases after you the most tenaciously. But I've not seen him here on C64 yet. And there's me going on about being far away from the ghost, and I haven't seen one for the last 20 seconds. They're all up here. They're all... No, yeah, we've got... There appear to be ghosts... The colours of the ghosts weren't all different there as well if you looked up the top on the C64. I don't know. This is Jungly Steps, the most difficult level. I think you have to complete this one twice or 3 times. I'm not sure. Yes, look here on the C64. Some of the ghosts repeat colours. We've got... Do we have too many ghosts? Or... I can't count them. There's either colours repeating on the ghosts, or we've got too many ghosts on the C64 version. It's going to be hard to try and get them all on the screen and try and count them. But yeah, we've definitely got 2 red ones there, because I've seen 2 red ones. 2 green ones. I wonder if we've got extra ghosts, or if they've just repeated the colours. Anyway, over to the Sinclair Spectrum, and there is a 128K version of this with the same music as the ST. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it to run. It kept on crashing on my Specky, so we're playing the 48K version, which only has beeper noises. And I'm happier with the isometric view on this version. The split screen also works better than the ST version as well, because if you look, the title bar is taking up far less space than on the ST, but all the ghosts are the same colour. We've got 4 ghosts here on the Specky, or 5. There's one with funny eyes down there. He's just gone over the cherries there. He's the most intelligent. And the Specky has all the same animation between the levels. It's a really nice version. And as I say, on a 128K, you'll have the same music as the ST, and it has the full atmosphere of the arcade experience. I quite like how you do have this vertical view, like the arcade with the scoreboard on the right-hand side. It's the kind of aspect ratio, I guess, that the arcade designers wanted, and that you're not getting on the Amiga and the Megadrive or the Master System. Here on the Specky you actually are. Across the Amstrad CPC, pretty obviously it's a Specky port here, as you can see, and yeah, it's running much slower. Which, back in the day, and I had this version, I didn't really notice until I actually played the Specky version for the first time, and I went, oh. They've not even bothered on the main player screen here, where you can see Pac-Man, to use any other colours. Those ghosts could be other colours. We've got the Amstrad's 4-colour mode. You can see there's other colours in use on the title screen on the right. No, they've not bothered to colour anything. Pac-Man could be yellow. No, can't be bothered to do that. This thing's been lazily converted, no optimisation at all. It's chugging along here. And it's a shame because the graphics are quite nicely defined as well. You do have the 128K music from the Specky, and that's on the standard 64K Amstrad version. Yeah, it plays okay, but you wouldn't choose it over the Specky version. Over to the MSX, and I apologise for those funny characters on the left-hand side, the bottom of the screen there. Don't know where they've come from. And on the MSX, you've got something that looks like what the Amstrad version should look like. You've got a yellow Pac-Man, and okay, you don't have coloured ghosts, but at least you've got a yellow Pac-Man. And yeah, it slows down when there's a lot on the screen, and there's no MSX hardware sprites in use. You can see colour clash on the Pac-Man sprite there. Again, it's lazy. It's lazy, lazy, lazy. The machine's got hardware sprites. Why not make the Ghosts and Pac-Man hardware sprites? It wouldn't be much work, but it's just the Spectrum code here quickly ported over. And yeah, it's a little bit slow like the Amstrad version, and they could have done so much more with it. And of course, all the Ghosts are the same colour, so you can't even determine if they do all have different behavioural characteristics, apart from the ones with the funny eyes. Again, AY rendition of the music from the arcade, very nice as it is on the ST and the Spectrum and the Amstrad. But MSX owners, like the Amstrad owners, are being shortchanged here. So looking across all the different versions of Pacmania, the Amiga and Megadrive versions attempt to improve on the arcade by having that larger screen and the larger maps, and yeah, actually I quite like it. I do quite like it. The game feels slightly more expansive. The Amiga version especially looks incredibly polished, and they both play very well. They're almost like improvements on the arcade, even if the visuals on them both don't quite match the arcade. The ST version, boy, what's going on? The window is even smaller than the 8-bit versions with that massive scoreboard on the right. It's a really lazy piece of programming. I'm sorry, the ST is a 16-bit computer. I know it doesn't have hardware scrolling, but even so, they could have done a far better job on it than they did. Master System version, very credible and has that larger screen size that the Amiga and the Megadrive have. Graphics are slightly more crude, don't like how the ghosts look, but overall it's a pretty decent port for the Master System with slightly beepy, annoying music. On the 8-bit home micros, well, the Spectrum version is probably the highlight. It tries to replicate the arcade. It has that narrow screen aspect ratio that the arcade has, with a scoreboard that isn't too big, and it all runs along at a decent speed. It's rather nice, and I quite enjoy playing it. C64 version, there's something slightly wrong. I can't put my finger on it. It feels like the map is slightly too small, but it isn't, because I've counted how many power pills go from left to right on the first level, which is 11. That seems to match the other 8-bit versions and the ST, so there's something not quite right there. It's almost like the map isn't zoomed in far enough. It's a little bit too far out, and you can see just a little bit too much, which is a shame really. But other than that, it plays quite well, if a little bit fast. Amstrad CPC version, it's a lazy port. It chugs along. We could have had a little bit more colour. It's been done in a few days from the Spectrum, which is a real shame really, because it could, with a little bit more polish, it would have been as good as the Spectrum version. And the same applies to the MSX really. They've not bothered to use the hardware sprites. At least Pac-Man is yellow on the MSX, but it's all a little bit shoddy and been done really, really quickly. Overall, every system has a fairly solid port. Everything I've listed are minor niggles. They don't really detract from the playability of the game, and it's certainly an interesting and playable twist on the original Pac-Man game.